This isn't just a stopwatch. It's really just a tool of innovation, a witness to history and a testament to human ingenuity. But how did a humble timing device become one of the most celebrated watch complications ever? Well, today we're going to dive into the captivating history and the legacy of the chronograph, from horse races to the moon and everywhere in between. But before we can go into its history, we have to make sure we define what is a chronograph. So let's start with the basics. A chronograph is a watch that is a built-in stopwatch function. Seems simple, right? But it's much more than that. Chronographs have shaped history, whether timing laps on a racetrack, guiding pilots to the skies, or serving as trusted companions in space. And often they're accompanied with a tachometer, and if you want to know about that, I already made a video about it, so check that one after this one. Also, I want to give you a challenge for this video. Don't subscribe. I know, it sounds a little crazy, but I don't want you to subscribe to the channel until you learn something new. But once you learn something new, go ahead and tap that red button and stay along for the journey. And by the way, did you know that Washington is the most common place name in the United States, with over 91 towns, counties, and cities with that name? Me either. Thanks for subscribing. Let's go ahead and get to the video. Let's start with the birth of the chronograph. The story begins with Nicolas Mathieu Rieussec. He's a French watchmaker to the royal court and developed a device specifically designed to time horse races. This device was presented to the French Academy of Sciences in 1821 and was met with really great acclaim. His ingenious device used ink to record a lapse time on a rotating disc, earning it the name Chronograph, or time writer. His invention consisted of clockwork mechanisms that drove a rotating disc. When a race began, a needle tipped with the ink was pressed against the disc, leaving a mark. And as the disc rotated, the needle would continue to mark the line. When the race ended, the needle was lifted, leaving a distinct line on the disc, and when measuring the length of the line, the elapsed time could be accurately determined. This invention marked the start of a journey that would see the chronograph evolve into a mechanical marvel, cherished by scientists, athletes, and watch enthusiasts alike. This brings us to the next chapter, from pocket watches to the wrist. By the early 20th century, the chronograph had moved from the pocket to the wrist. Why? Aviation and military demands. You see, pilots needed precise timing for navigation, and military strategies relied on split-second calculations, particularly with artillery coming in overhead. So in 1913, Longines introduced the 13.33Z, Z, depending on where you are in the world, one of the first wrist chronographs. Then, in 1934, Breitling set a new standard with its two-pressure chronograph system, or layout, and that's really the design that is still pretty much the norm today. Next chapter, I got something that you think you know about, but I'll give you some facts that you don't, and that's the chronographs in space. So many people know, in 1965, NASA selected Omega Speedmaster after rigorous testing, making it the official watch of the space missions. This moon watch, as it became known as, is legendary during the Apollo 11 mission, timing critical maneuvers as humanity stepped into the lunar surface. And I believe the quote is, "One step for mankind, one giant..." What is the quote again? "One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind." Something like that. But here's a couple things about the Moonwatch that you probably don't know. So, Omega was actually chosen by a secret shopper approach. So basically what happened is in 1962, NASA engineer James Reagan was tasked with finding the suitable chronograph. He didn't want to approach any of the companies directly. Instead, he purchased several watches and chronographs from different brands off the shelf at a Houston jewelry store. This secret shopper approach ensured that the watches were standard production models and not specially prepared for the testing. And what is this testing, you might ask? It was incredibly rigorous. The watches were subjugated to the series of extreme tests designed to simulate the harsh conditions of space flight. High and low temperatures, exposures to extreme variation, humidity, basically testing in the different environments, being vacuum operated in near vacuum environment, as well as shock and vibration testing, as well as the ability to handle accelerations to really tolerate high G-forces that the astronauts would experience. Out of the watches tested, only the Omega Speedmaster survived these grueling trials. It maintained its accuracy and functionality despite the extreme conditions. Now, this impressive performance led NASA to officially qualify the Speedmaster for manned space missions in 1965. Also, you know what the quote was, "One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind"? Did you know there's actually video and audio of Neil Armstrong singing Hippity Hoppity as he hops around the moon with his Omega Speedmaster on?
Hippity hoppity, hippity hoppity, hippity hopping over hill and dale. Da 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 da. Hippity hopping along.
Another fun fact that if you didn't know, go ahead and hit subscribe. Now we transition to Chapter 5, Chronographs and Motorsports. Now, chronographs aren't just for the skies or space. They dominate the racetrack too, as many of you know. Timing lap speeds, measuring split times, and ensuring precision, these watches became indispensable in motorsports. And the reason why? Because before advanced electronic timing system, chronographs were the primary tool for timekeeping. Drivers often relied on these wristwatches to really track their performance. And the reliance on the personal chronographs led to a strong association between racing and certain watch brands like Heuer, now known as Tag Heuer, which became popular among drivers and teams alike. This connection between chronographs and motorsports has been cemented by famous figures and events. For example, the Steve McQueen, who famously wore a Heuer Monaco in the film Le Mans, solidifying its status as a racing icon. And also the Rolex Daytona gained its name popularity from its association with the Daytona International Speedway. And these watches are still incredibly popular today, and also quite expensive, but we can get into that later. Now we go into Chapter 6. We talked about racing, but what you may not have known is there was actually a race for the first automatic chronograph. You see, the 1960s brought about this fierce competition. Who would be able to create the first automatic chronograph? Now, Zenith unveiled the El Primero, Heuer introduced the Caliber 11, and Seiko launched the 6139. These watches all revolutionized the market, blending functionality with convenience. And they all deserve a little bit extra to talk about their history. So Zenith and the El Primero. El Primero in Spanish really just means the first, and is widely recognized as the first automatic chronograph to be presented to the public. More on that later. It was a high-frequency movement beating at 36,000 vibrations per hour, or 5 Hz, which allowed for greater accuracy, capable of measuring time down to the 1/10 of a second. The El Primero was a fully integrated chronograph movement, meaning it was designed from the ground up as an automatic chronograph rather than being a modular addition to an existing movement. With tags, the Caliber 11 was really a collaborative effort. Heuer, now Tag Heuer, partnered with Breitling, Bjorn Hamilton, and Dubois de Rez to develop the Caliber 11. This movement used a modular design, which is different from the El Primero, with a chronograph module added to the Bjorn micro rotor automatic movement. The Caliber 11 was known for its distinctive left side crown and its pusher. Next up we have Seiko in the 6139. This movement was notable for its vertical clutch, which provided a smoother chronograph operation. Also, Seiko's 6139 was known for being more affordable compared to the Swiss offerings. It's kind of crazy how that trend still persists today. Now, there has been a lot of debate over which movement was truly the first, due to the close proximity of their releases and differing interpretation of what it constitutes as a first. Was it the first to be conceived? Was it the first to be produced? Or was it the first to get to the market? However, Zenith's El Primero is generally credited as being the first to be presented to the public, which gives it the title of being, the El Primero. Regardless, each of these movements had its own strengths and contributed to the evolution of an automatic chronograph. They represented a fascinating period of innovation and competition in the world of watchmaking. And now we look at chronographs today. Today, the chronograph remains a collector's favorite. Whether it's the sporty sophistication of the Tudor Black Bay Chrono or the elegance of the Patek Philippe, chronographs really blend the style and practicality. And the vintage-inspired models are especially popular, proving that great design never really goes out of style, with watches in the vintage models going well over $500, $600, $700, $800,000 for some of these watches. And then you also have the cheaper versions, such as the Moon Watch, which also made by Omega, which really helped bring watch collecting back into a new audience with different colorways and designs. Even if I don't think it's that great of a watch, which might be a hot take, if you want to know more about it, let me know in the comments down below. But in itself, that design, the spirit, the nature of the watch has really helped it regain birth in today's society. Regardless, beyond their tactical brilliance, chronographs have witnessed pivotal moments in history. From timing dogfights in World War II to helping doctors measure pulse rates, these timepieces are a part of our shared history. And from the racetrack to space, chronographs is more than just a watch. It's a legacy of innovation, precision, and just so much more. What's your favorite chronograph story or model? Let me know in the comments down below. And no matter what you're timing ahead, I hope you just remember a couple things. To remember to believe in yourself, believe in God, and amazing things are going to happen. Thanks for staying tuned, and now check out another video. But until next time, God bless and peace.